in some way, I feel like the films I've made have all been, you know, you could say that they're all sort of independent films, but not just because of the way that they're financed and set up, not just because of that independence, but also just the spirit behind the movies and the storytelling themselves. I mean, it's like, you know, I'm not trying to make Hollywood-style genre studio movies. I mean, they might have elements of that in them, but they're also my own particular way of taking the genre and doing something hopefully interesting and unique with it, you know. And I wouldn't have the ability to do those sorts of things if I were making a movie under the studio's system, you know. In some ways, working with less money affords you more creative opportunities sometimes. I've had the fortunate circumstances of working in Europe for the last 2 films and have found that as an American filmmaker, it's given me some creative license to make the kinds of movies that I probably wouldn't have been able to make if they were made in the United States, because European producers and creative types tend to be more, you know, they tend to be less intrusive to the creative process, and they allow the director to create and realize his or her vision. American productions tend to be more corporate somehow, you know. So, you know, yeah, I mean, you know, I'm happy to categorize myself as an independent filmmaker. I mean, that's fine by me. I mean, okay. I'm not courting the studios to make my next movies. I'm just looking to get enough money together to actually make the movies that I want to make, you know. Exactly. I took the train back in 1988, and that experience helped me, you know, and my co-writer Will Conroy helped me and him write this story. And you know, I'd always, after that experience, I'd always, you know, as I started to become a filmmaker, the idea had always percolated in my mind. Wouldn't it be cool to set a story on that train? And you know, it's a perfect kind of dramatic little nugget, because you've got, you know, a given time period, you know, 7 or 6 days from Beijing to Moscow. You've got a claustrophobic, enclosed environment, and you can just sort of create a story that will naturally sort of, the dramatic suspense will heighten as you get closer and closer to your destination. So it sort of seemed like a cool concept. Conceptually, it seemed like a cool way to write and to create a story, is to set it on this train. And not only that, but just the idea of, at least for an American audience, it's sort of more, it's an exotic adventure, you know, and I had wanted to sort of replicate as much as I could the sort of exoticness of that experience in this movie, at least for an American audience. As I say that because I think Europeans, it's like, yeah, okay, you know, it's not maybe as a novelty, but for American audiences, like, you know, when's the last time, you know, Americans don't take trains, they, you know, they drive everywhere, and to them, Russia is still a you know, mysterious world, you know, on the other side of the planet, you know. So to try to create something more interesting was part of that idea. Yeah, the Hitchcock movies were very much a touchstone in making this movie, like The Lady Vanishes, Strangers on a Train, you know, North by Northwest. I mean, you know, he made a lot of key scenes in his movies were set on trains, because in the 40s and 50s, that's how people got around. So in some ways, we were trying to harken back to an earlier kind of genre with this movie, and sort of try to create a throwback to earlier kinds of movies. Yeah, definitely. And Hitchcock, just also in his, you know, in his stories, often there are these sort of innocents who are tossed into extraordinary circumstances, like, you know, Jimmy Stewart, Doris Day, and The Man Who Knew Too Much, you know, like those kinds of Americans abroad, you know, like, you know, that was sort of part of the idea in terms of the creating these this American couple, Woody Harrelson and Emily Mortimer, is like, you know, is sort of putting them into these extraordinary circumstances and seeing what happens. It was not an easy shoot. I mean, you know, we needed it to be cold and bleak because the story is set in Siberia in the middle of the winter. So we ended up having, we shot the movie in Lithuania in the middle of the winter, and fortunately or unfortunately, it turned out to be exactly what we wanted it to be: cold and snowy and bleak. So that was dramatically important for the movie, is to have that look and that kind of there's no place to. The only place you can stay warm is on the train, and to make it feel very kind of cold and exotic. And we were fortunate that it was a cold winter that year in Europe, because we actually got this year apparently there's like no snow anywhere. That year it finally snowed. We were able to get the look for the movie that we wanted. Well, it was as simple as getting him the script and making an offer, and thankfully he responded and liked the project, and we had a good conversation, and he agreed to do it. So I think he was interested in the idea of playing a Russian. I don't think he'd done that before, and who better can you get for that kind of a role than someone like him, who's so easily adaptable and just transforms himself in each particular role.